So in a lot of Rav Shagar's writings, you get this feeling like he really doesn't like it when people justify their religious faith, definitely not to other people, even sometimes to themselves. Can you talk a little bit about why he's against latzdik et atzmi, to justify myself?
Well, if I'm understanding you correctly, I think it's connected to the way he sees, words as really secondary to moments of faith. He says that faith is first and foremost a private thing. It's, my faith. And I have to be able to put it into words and explain it to other people. But those words always come second. And that if those words fail in explaining my faith to another person, that doesn't actually mean there's a problem with my faith. That means there's a problem with my words. And the transition from, private faith to public, words is always going to be difficult. So trying to make your faith dependent on your words is really very problematic.
Well, what happens if, let's take Kiruv, for example, outreach. I would say the main role of rabbis or teachers who are involved in outreach is to take Jewish ideas, ancient Jewish ideas, put them into an accessible form and kind of motivate people to keep halakha or to believe in God. Do you think that would bother Rav Shagar, that people are trying to kind of convince you through words to be religious, to believe in God? Does he think it's impossible? What do you think his relationship to Kiruv and outreach would be?
Well, I think on one level, he would say it's a good thing. He's very into the idea of translating traditional texts into ideas that really resonate with people who might not have really been able to open up to the texts and ideas in their original form. But I also think there's a certain point at which if you're not, persuaded by simply reading the translation or whatever, if the Kiruv rabbi is working incredibly hard to basically trick you, which is an experience many people often have with Kiruv. They feel they've been tricked, or the person is trying to trick them. That at that point, the person is, one, not being honest to the tradition, but also is denying the fact that God made you who you are. That if you are someone who tradition really doesn't speak to, Rav Shagar doesn't always say so in as many words, but the real implication is that God made you that way.
So let's take that really seriously, that statement you made. I think Rav Shagar would definitely agree with you. How could you ever motivate somebody to pray, follow the laws of Shabbat, if they're not motivated? Because there's a feeling from religious people like, I have a duty, I have an obligation, even like a religious obligation, to get people to do mitzvot. Do you think Rav Shagar would be against that, or is it impossible?
I'm not sure he would be necessarily against it or for it. I think that if you felt that was your duty, then that itself is significant. If you feel motivated to show other people the meaning of Judaism, then that's who you are. But I think he would subordinate that. He would, put that to the test of honesty. That you must be honest to yourself and who Judaism is, and you have to let other people be honest to themselves.
Right. There's a great documentary that we've both watched. What's his name? Who's the filmmaker?
Morrow.
Yeah. So he made this great documentary about Rav Shagar's life, and he interviews a lot of Rav Shagar's students, and you really get to see, some of them are heads of yeshiva, other are professors. Some are, they don't wear kippah. People don't wear kippah anymore, and it's really amazing the spectrum of students of his. And I remember, in the documentary, one of the students said, Rav Shagar would ask questions and not think of the educational implications. In other words, maybe this would cause a person to start keeping a mitzvah, and yet he would still do it, which almost gives you a feeling like, for Rav Shagar, the real goal and quest that we're doing when we're studying religious texts, when we're praying, is not keeping more or keeping less. It's a quest altogether different. What do you think is the goal of studying religious texts for Rav Shagar? or praying for that matter?
Well, I think praying and studying are very different, so I will focus on studying for now. Studying for Rav Shagar is about being in a relationship with God in a very broad sense. It says that studying Torah, and for him this most specifically meant Gemara, Talmud, studying Torah is a brit, it's a covenant with God. And that the fact of being in a covenant with God means actively putting yourself into a relationship with God, and the fact that you involve yourself in it is shown in the fact that you're looking for personal meaning in the texts. You want to know not just what does this text say, but what does this text say to me? If I take this text from 300 years ago, 500 years ago, 1,000, 1,500, however many years ago, and I insert it into the 21st century, what does it say here and now? And if you're not doing that, then you've actually left yourself out of the covenant. And that's, I think, sort of what Torah study is about for Rav Shagar.